Well, today the talk is let's talk about sex, baby. It's interesting. When I was growing up, sex was something that was not talked about, at least not in my household. And so we tend to, as young children, make assumptions about things, or maybe parents give us information that causes us to believe in a certain way. And so part of the growing up process has been about believing that sexuality somehow is a bad thing. It's dirty, it's wrong. So I'm here to tell you that we are created perfect, whole, and complete. Therefore, our sexuality is a part of that. So as we open up our minds and hearts and begin to live more authentically, we start to celebrate who we are, not who we wish we could be, not who our parents thought we could be, but who we are for sure. And of course, when it comes to the idea of a spiritual search or a spiritual place, we can't talk about this. Well, think about the different things that we don't talk about from the pulpit. We don't talk about trauma or abuse or drugs or illness, but should we be looking at the entire whole person as a whole being and learn to celebrate that rather than to separate ourselves and go, this part of me is okay and this part of me is not? We were created as sexual humans. That's part of who we are. Yes, it's for procreation, but it's also pleasurable. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but it is. So we want to take a look at how we become completely okay with all of us, every little bit about us. So sex has been a behind closed doors sort of topic, not one discussed in spiritual community for sure. But think about it. There is no spot where God is not. So that means God is behind those closed doors. So let's bring that conversation out into the open. We have come to expect certain things in spiritual community. We know, what people are going to wear and, who we're going to see and what's going to happen. We know when there's going to be prayers or when there's going to be treatment. We know when there's going to be a meditation or a talk or some music. We have a system that we follow and we think that's what spirituality is, or that's what we do. And I'm here to say spirituality, to truly live from our spiritual essence, means we are living fully and authentically every aspect of our being, not judging any of it as bad or wrong, but rather living from the highest potential that we possess. So we're all impacted by all sorts of different things. And in order to have the grand rising that we've been looking at, or to begin to see everything as new and good, we need to look at our wholeness, which means we really have to look at every aspect of our personal, emotional, mental, spiritual lives. All of it is what makes us who we are. So we're spiritual beings having this human experience, and that includes pleasure. I don't know about you, but I think most of us would like a little more happiness, a little more joy. But what happens when we feel vulnerable? Yeah. See, that vulnerability tends to cause us to shut down a little bit, to withdraw, even in marriages or even in places with our close family. We will tend to shut down certain things. And I remember hearing from someone, they were, singing beautifully and loudly and having just a blast. And then somebody walked in on them and they immediately got angry. So the anger wasn't about the person walking in. The anger was about somebody seeing them performing in a way that was very uninhibited. All of a sudden, that vulnerability popped up, and there was a frustration that came. So when we are looking at any area of our lives, what we want to do is acknowledge and recognize that who we are is who we were created to be. Now, I remember as a teenager wishing I could be anybody but me. I wanted to be taller. I wanted to be blonder. I wanted to be, I don't know, a whole bunch of things. I didn't want to be me. I kept looking out there and going, wonder what it would be like to be that person, or to have that much money, or to drive that kind of car, to live in this kind of house. What would that be like? And there was all this wishing and dreaming. But what I realize now at 67 years old, that, wow, I missed a lot of stuff. Why? Because I was hiding who I am in the hopes of becoming something I was wishing for. And I know some of us have done that. Some people are really clear, I am who I am, and they love who they are, and they celebrate that and stand in their truth, and it's powerful. But then there's others who, through childhood or whatever, have been taught that who you are is not enough. Well, I'm here to tell you, you are enough. That who you are is absolutely perfect for the life that you're living, for the journey that you're walking, and for the place that you're headed. Yes, we're all in this together. So when we look at life, it's time for us to return to wholeness, understanding that every aspect of our human experience is an aspect of spirit. There's no separation between our sexuality and our humanity. There's no separation between sexuality and the journey that we are walking together or individually. Our lives are a reflection of who we truly are. So if we can come to a place of accepting every area of our lives, looking at what we would like to improve, but allowing ourselves to be real. Yeah. I think that a lot of the problems in our world have come from our own self-loathing, self-hatred. See, if we really loved ourselves, we wouldn't be judging. We wouldn't be wishing away our lives. We'd be having them. We would wake up in the morning excited to put our feet on the floor and begin a new day. Trusting that although things are changing, that change is actually a good thing. That change can be positive and productive. Now, I know that, I haven't experienced it, but Tantra is a holistic spiritual practice. Now, it originated 1,500 years ago, and it was, at that time, it was a rebellion against Orthodox Hinduism. But Tantric practitioners believe that we are put on this planet at this time in these bodies for a reason. And the way to enlightenment is not by denying our physical body or denying pleasure, but rather embracing everything that being human has to offer. We want to remind ourselves of our spiritual nature, and that who we are is absolute perfection. Now, our behaviors may not be, right? Like, we tend to behave in ways that are less than perfect sometimes. But that doesn't change the innate perfection that we've been created to be. So if we were to go backward, and from the time we came into this life experience, begin to alter and change the way we look at things, the way we express, how we talk about life, if we go back to the beginning and remember why we came into this life experience, because I think there was a reason for all of us. And I think each one of us came in fully equipped to live to that full expression. So when we can accept all aspects of our being, then we are definitely in a position where we can achieve more, do more, and actually make positive changes in the world. Everything we do as humans is spiritual. because we're spiritual beings. Our humanity is an aspect of that. Our sexuality is an aspect of that. Our work is an aspect of that. Our speech, our thoughts, everything is a part of this one thing. You know, we teach that there's only one thing going on, and yet we live as though there are aspects that are good and aspects that are bad, but then we talk about oneness. Could we talk about oneness in a different way if we could accept that there's only one thing going on and only one thing must be showing up? Then it must show up as sex and sexuality and pleasure and intimacy. All of it is a part of our journey. And we're all going to experience it a little bit differently, and that's okay. So as social creatures, we live in community, and intimacy is one of the true delights of human connection. You know, it's when we're in that place of closeness, when we can let down our guard. Now, we do that mostly with, you know, people like maybe our spouse or our children. We'll be a little more authentic with them. But even there, we will hide aspects of our own being. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to be completely free of the judgments that we've placed on our bodies. I wonder how that would impact our day-to-day experiences. If we could literally be vulnerable to another person, with another person, allowing them to be who they authentically are and allowing ourselves to be authentically who we are. You know, I noticed through the years that there are times when we hide. We hide who we are. We hide what we believe because we're afraid that people around us will judge us, criticize us. But here's what I've noticed is I think I have probably judged and criticized myself more than anybody outside of me ever has. And I don't know about you, but if that's the case for you, what if we were to change that around? What if instead of criticizing and judging what it is that excites and delights us, what it is that brings us joy or pleasure, and instead embraced that aspect of ourselves as healthy and vibrant? Like I sometimes think, and you know, this is just my belief, but when I look at sort of the behaviors that we would say are bad or terrible, criminal, I wonder if they come from that place of shame. That somehow, like I look at, you know, probably shouldn't say this, but I look at, you know, Catholicism, for example. Priests are not allowed to marry. Shutting down that aspect, the sexuality, could that in fact cause people to behave in different ways? Because of that resistance, has it turned it into something bad? What if we were just allowed to be who we are? What if each one of us grew up knowing that we are whole beings, that the way we're created is lovely and wonderful? And what if we lived from that understanding? If we raised our children to know that who they are is good, that if you catch them masturbating at 3 years old, you're not telling them they're bad and wrong and evil and terrible, but rather going, oh, let's keep that in private place, right? Like there's ways of communicating without giving the impression that something is evil, right? Sexuality is not bad, right? It's something that's good, and it fits every aspect of our being. The more that we can be intimate with ourselves, the more that we can uncover our own shadow, the more that we can discover our true physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental selves, the more we will be able to be intimate with others. See, it all starts from self-acceptance. Yes, self-acceptance, self-love. How do we do that? How do we come to a place of fully accepting who we are? Now, because sex has been considered something shameful that should be hidden away in the past, we don't talk about it openly, even with our sexual partners. Even with our spouse, sometimes we won't talk about it. But if we were beginning to look at it as inherently spiritual, would that not invite conversation, communication, consent? Consent's an interesting one. I think opening ourselves up to realizing our wholeness, opening ourselves up to realize that sexuality is personal, it's individual, and it's spiritual. If we can start to look at every aspect of our being from that vantage point, we begin to free ourselves from shame, from self-loathing, from humiliation and hatred and whatever else we're feeling inside of ourselves, because we have a desire. See, because sex has been hidden away, because we don't really talk about it, because it's kind of hidden, now it becomes something that everybody wants to find something out about it. I don't think we do our children a service by allowing them to discover what sex is on the playground, talking to other children about what is or what couldn't be. I remember as a little kid when somebody suggested my parents had sex to have children, I was absolutely appalled. They would never do that. Anybody have that thought? They'd never. That's not how babies are made. I think we like the stork idea better. But as children, we don't have an understanding. And so as parents or adults, we need to give that information. Ernest Holmes reminds us that the ultimate goal of life is to be completely free from all discord of every nature. And that includes of sexuality. And this means that we have to be willing to explore our own sexuality, learn what we like or don't like, and to be able to be willing to listen deeply to our partners, to listen to our children, be able to speak about it from a way of wholeness rather than a place of shame. I know parents who have never spoke to their children about their sexuality. And then kids are curious. They want to know, they want to find out. So they're asking questions, not of adults usually, but of other children, people who probably don't know any more than they do. So we're in a place where we want to change the narrative, where we want to empower people to be the very best version of themselves. Now, for me, there has to be clear boundaries. So, for example, when Geneviève was born, I told Pierre that it was essential that if ever she says no or ever she says stop, that we immediately respond to those commands. So, if she's being tickled and she goes, no, 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 then we would immediately stop tickling her. Whatever was going on. And the reason for that is I wanted her to know that her no or stop has power. I was raised to believe that I have to go along with whatever anybody else has to say or do. And that resulted in a rape at 14. What if instead I was taught that no is my right, that boundary is something that I'm allowed to express even as a woman? Boundaries are, making it clear that our physical body is ours and we have complete control over it. And we need to listen to our body and we need to listen to each other. Listen for the yes and the no. And trust it, knowing that it's really important to pay attention to these words and these signals that we get from other people. Now, there's a lot of mixed feelings around sexuality and our sexual history. And we could condemn ourselves and say, oh, I did this or I did that, and I shouldn't have. Well, what's done is done. And here and now, everything new, as Daniel Nahmod said, everything new. When we take a look at Gary Lynn Floyd's song, Unbounded, I want to invite you to become unbound, to accept that everything is new, that what happened yesterday, last week, last month is in the rearview mirror. And what's happening going forward depends fully and completely on what you choose in this moment, how you choose to live, how you choose to think about yourself, how you choose to speak about yourself, what it is you choose to do for you. I don't know how many of you lived your lives wishing you could be somebody else, or that something about your life could be different. We have the power to create a different life, but not by resisting what is, because what we resist persists. So what we want to do instead is embrace. I want to invite you to become really, really clear about who you really are. A spiritual being, first and foremost. And every aspect of your humanity is an aspect of your spirituality. No separation. So because of the mixed feelings we have, that creates some confusion. We might enjoy sex, but then afterwards feel guilty about it, have a feeling of shame. I shouldn't have enjoyed that, or I shouldn't have done that. And this happens for all kinds of reasons. It could be that we were raised to think of it as dirty, or that it was a secret. That's how I grew up with it. Or that, can only happen in certain ways with certain people, and anything different than that is bad and wrong. That what we're going through or what we've been through has determined how we view things today. So it's time to reunite sexually and spiritually, and understand that healthy sexuality is an intrinsic aspect of our spirituality, one to be embraced, one to actually allow for our wholeness to be revealed. Now, we talk often about authenticity and being your authentic self. Well, sexuality is part of that. Being who you are requires that you accept all aspects of your being. And maybe you're asexual. Okay, let that be the reality. Maybe you're bisexual. Let that be your reality. Maybe you're gay. Maybe you're straight. Whatever your innate self-love, self-care needs to accept who you are. Doesn't matter what other people have said. Doesn't matter what your parents think about your choices. Every one of us reproduces through sex. And it can be pleasurable. Should be pleasurable, actually. So if that's the case, if all of us came into the world this way, how do we judge it bad and wrong? What if instead we begin to look at pleasure and intimacy and sexuality as a divine part of this beautiful human experience? that we get to really celebrate who we are at every stage. Science Mind proclaims the spiritual nature of humankind. It removes fear by introducing love. It places us in the mind of God as some part of the eternal wholeness. That's a quote from Ernest Holmes. The spiritual nature of humankind. See, when we accept our spiritual nature, what is there to fear? If I am one with this universe, is there anything really, truly to fear through that? Maybe not. Ernest Holmes in Science Mind magazine in 1993, there was an article that said, through a conscious acceptance of the fullness of the presence of God, there flows in and through us a joy, a love, and a wholeness that touches every part of our being. See, when we live from wholeness, there isn't shame. When we're living from our wholeness, from our authenticity, there is the ability to fully, intimately connect with each other. We're more open with each other. We're more accepting of each other. We're more loving of each other. In the book, Lessons in Spiritual Mind Healing, Ernest Holmes wrote, we are so intimately connected with the universal creative God power that it is impossible to get away from it. You got that right? Impossible. Hence, we never have to wonder whether or not we are in touch with it. It is where we are, and we are in it. It is in us. It is around us and flowing through us. Everything we do, everything we are, is created through that divine essence. So how do we move forward? How do we move forward? I think, if we take time this week to explore and experience pleasure, and that could be through sex or through intimacy, delicious food, good conversation, looking at the beauty of the world around us. See if you can find pleasure in most of the things you do this week. See if you can, just expand enough to have a real conversation with yourself. Don't even involve anybody else at the moment, but ask yourself for real and for true, do I love and accept me as I am with the journey that I've walked in the place that I find myself today? That's the work. That's the work. To love ourselves completely without any particular agenda. See how much pleasure you can endure. So some of us, it can be hard to receive pleasure because maybe there's a blockage mentally. So this is a great opportunity to really reflect on what it is you believe and why you believe it. And then go, do I still believe it? And maybe it's time to change that and let everything be new again. The journey that we're on is really a gift. And finding a way to love ourselves and all aspects of our life is really essential to our success. So I invite you to just be you. As I've said many times, everyone else is already taken. So you might as well just relax into what you have and who you are, because it is the right, perfect thing for you and for life at this point in time.